Hey everybody, welcome to the Nitro Show. I'm Burl.
And I'm Streit.
And today we are previewing round 2 of the college football playoff. We got some really awesome games coming up that we're looking forward to this week. And before we do that, we want to thank you for spending your time with us today. And please make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notify bell so you don't miss any updates. Like the video, drop a comment, and share with your friends. It really helps us grow the podcast. We're new here, so the more subscribers we can get, we appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you're listening to us in the audio realm on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, drop us a review and leave a comment. We'd love to hear who you think is going to win the college football playoff quarterfinals and who's going to move on to the next round.
Okay, so let's start with the Sugar Bowl. We're dog fans, so we're going to start with Georgia, damn it. We got number 7 Notre Dame taking on our number 2 Georgia Bulldogs. Interesting on the betting lines here, right? Because the opening line, Notre Dame was favored by, 1.5? And now it's flipped, that Georgia's favored.
Yep. Yeah, it flipped pretty quick, I think, within the first day. And when it opened at Notre Dame 1.5, I was like, is that just, knee-jerk reaction to Notre Dame kind of looking good at the beginning of that Indiana game? But then people actually taking a step back and thinking about how Georgia had played, particularly in that Texas game and with the backup quarterback.
I think it was Vegas just getting people to put money on Georgia.
Yeah, they said a lot of money came in when Notre Dame favored.
That's wild. This should be a really great game. I'm excited for this matchup. I think it's a good matchup for Georgia. They're, just with the styles that both teams play. They're both two physical teams. Georgia's used to that. They've been playing physical football all season long against the best teams. And it's going to come down to, can Georgia stop Notre Dame's run? That's one of the big keys to me. And will Gunnar Stockton be able to make the passes against Notre Dame's defense?
Right. So let's go back in the time machine a little bit. 2017, second game of the year, Georgia goes to Notre Dame. You've got a backup quarterback making his first start in Jake Fromm. Georgia kind of went in the game plan of that game that they weren't going to, put Fromm in a situation where he was going to lose the game for them. They used their running backs. They tried to work it, keep Notre Dame in check on defense. And Notre Dame in that game was very similar. They had a running quarterback. They had a good running game. Georgia had some good outside linebackers and kind of kept it close. And Georgia ended up walking away with a 20-19 victory. Just a lot of similarities from that game to this game. Georgia coming in with a new starting quarterback. Notre Dame looked very strong in the game against Indiana on defense. Really held that Indiana offense that had scored a lot of points this season down. Unfortunately, the news came out today that Notre Dame has lost its defensive leader along the line. Riley Mills suffered a knee injury. He is going to be out for the rest of the season. So even if Notre Dame does move on after this game, he's out. And that really could be a key factor to help Georgia, because this is going to be a Georgia team that is going to look to run the ball. They're getting ETNs getting healthier. And with Stockton in there, they're going to feature the run out of the quarterback position a lot more than they did with Carson Beck in the game. This is a huge loss for Notre Dame. It really is a huge loss for them.
Yeah, that is a huge loss. And like we were saying, I think it's a good matchup for Georgia from a styles standpoint. Look at what Notre Dame does well. They run the ball and they play defense. Cool. Georgia's offense, regardless of who's at quarterback, is going to do just enough to keep them in the game and win. We've seen that several times against Texas and against other teams. Carson Beck went out there and had just the worst games, but somehow Georgia won. So one of the narratives is, how good is Gunnar Stockton going to be? Is he going to be able to do it? I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters how. I think the only thing that matters with Gunnar Stockton is he just can't turn the ball over.
Right. If he has to protect the football.
If he protects,
he can't throw bad interceptions, and if he is running the ball, he's got to protect it. Can't take any more shots like he took there in the Texas game in overtime.
Right. Which, if anything, that's a good indicator that he's going to hold on the ball, hopefully. But he can't throw interceptions and got to make the most of the chances that he gets. On the Notre Dame side, they're going to run the ball. We know they're going to run the ball. They got the three-headed monster, and they're really, really good running the rock. So Georgia is probably going to stack the box and try to take away that run game because that's what Notre Dame does best. So that means that Riley Leonard is going to have to throw the ball. And the good thing for them on Notre Dame's side is Georgia is susceptible to the deep pass. That's been all year. If you can throw a deep ball against Georgia, you have a chance. I mean, hell, Mississippi State even came back because they hit a few deep shots and scored 30. I mean, it's there if they have time, but that's a big if because Georgia's really good at getting after the quarterback.
Yeah. So I think obviously the big question mark in this game for both teams is Gunnar Stockton. He came in, obviously provided a huge spark for Georgia in the second half of that SEC championship game, but he's mostly an unknown in terms of the college football landscape. Now, there's been a lot of press about, Gunnar Stockton's legs, because yes, he will put his head down and take a shot, and he does like to run, but people outside the state of Georgia might not understand who Gunnar Stockton is and was as a quarterback in high school. Gunnar Stockton is one of the most decorated passing quarterbacks in state of Georgia history. He broke or was near a number of state records that were set by Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and were recently broken by Philo, playing at Georgia Tech, broke a lot of the records as well. But Gunnar Stockton is the state of Georgia's all-time leading touchdown passer. He broke Trevor Lawrence's record, who had broken Deshaun Watson's record. He is third all-time in passing yards, behind only Aaron Philo and Trevor Lawrence. So to say that Gunnar Stockton is just a runner is not accurate to what he was coming out of high school at all. And to say that he's going to go in there and just run the ball and they're going to run out routes and not let him throw the ball down the field, you do that and he's going to put up serious points on you because he does have an arm. It might not be Carson Beck's arm, but it certainly can get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference between him and Riley Leonard right now is that Riley Leonard has a lot of real game experience, and nothing substitutes for experience. So we'll see. Gunnar's been part of he's been in this system for 3 or 4 years now. He's been running against the first team defense for the past couple of years. So any defense that he's going to see during the game, he's not going to go in there, as this, wilting flower thinking, oh my God, this defense is so good. He goes against dudes every day he goes against the Butkus Award winner every day.
Right. And we also know he's tough. Obviously, he took that shot in the Texas game. But something else that I did not know that I heard the other day was when Gunnar was a freshman, he played some on the scout team, but not at quarterback. He played scout team safety when he was a freshman. So just a little bit insight on this kid that is willing to put his shoulder down, pick up a first down, take a shot to the head. I think Georgia's got a good shot in this game as long as they can do a couple things. I think one thing is low-scoring game is going to be a priority for Georgia. Georgia's going to want to keep the ball on the ground and move the clock. They don't want to get in a situation where they're having short drives and giving up possessions. I think another key for this game is going to be field position. Georgia lost Brett Thorson, who, was a Ray Guy finalist and one of the best punters in the country. And yes, they have the number one high school punter on their roster as well, who's going to step in. But Thorson was a different maker. Nobody returned Brett Thorson's punts hardly at all. And so that's an area where Georgia could be in trouble. On the flip side of the ball, special teams for Notre Dame is very weak. Notre Dame, they mentioned it a couple times during the game the other night that Notre Dame has the worst field goal percentage of any school in the country. So if it comes down to a kicking game, I've got a lot more faith in Peyton Woodring than I do Notre Dame's kicker.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a tough game, though. I mean, Notre Dame is really, really good this year. I don't think people really have been following how well they've been playing, but they've got the number 4 scoring offense in the country and the number 3 scoring defense in the country.
Right. I mean, we mentioned it last week.
Yeah.
Coming into last week's game, 6 of the last 10 before last week, they'd scored 49 points or more.
Yeah. So nothing to snooze at. This isn't, Brian Kelly's Notre Dame teams of the past, where it's just a gimme that whoever plays them in the playoff or the national championship is gonna walk through them. This is not going to be a cakewalk. Notre Dame, like I said last week, is they're built more like an SEC team than a lot of other teams out there.
Right.
And they can bring it.
So, Burl, the question is, who's going to win and how are they going to do it?
Oh, luck of the Irish. Is that going to be the name of the game? I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm picking Georgia. And it's not just because I'm a Georgia fan. I just think Georgia has the better roster. This Georgia team is gritty. They're the never say die dogs. And they've proven that they can win no matter how their quarterback plays. Even on the worst of days, they beat Texas. Carson had 3 interceptions. So it's a very well-rounded team, even with all the flaws at the receiver position and backup quarterback, all this other things that are going on. This team finds a way to win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything like that. I think it's going to be a really close, hard-fought game. But give me Georgia to squeak it out.
So I'm going to also take Georgia to win the game, to cover, obviously, because it's only a 1.5 point spread. So why would you not take somebody to cover in that situation? And I think they win it in 2 ways. I think number one, I think they pressure Riley Leonard into making mistakes. If Georgia can constantly get pressure on Riley Leonard and they can stop the running game, I think they'll force him into doing something that he doesn't want to do, giving Georgia a short field. And number 2, I think Georgia wins because finally, after this whole season, we will finally see a healthy Trevor Etienne. He looked great in that Texas game, rushed for 94 yards and was wearing a Kevlar flak jacket because his ribs were still banged up. He missed the first game of the season due to a suspension. He had a good game against Texas, but he's been hurt a lot. I think having him in the backfield healthy to not just have to rely on Nathan Frazier as a freshman, but also having Roderick Robinson back in there to add a little bit, when you need a tough yard or two, a little bit bigger back in there. Georgia will finally be healthy in the backfield, the rushing backfield at least.
Yeah.
Obviously not a quarterback. So give me the Dogs. Close game, low scoring, somewhere in the range of 21-17, something along in there.
Awesome, yeah. Let's go Dogs. Let's get this. This is gonna be a great game. Okay, so let's go across the country to the granddaddy of them all. Ohio State is taking on Oregon in the Rose Bowl.
In the all Big Ten Rose Bowl. That's really the Big Ten, Pac-10 Rose Bowl.
Funny how that worked out, huh? But this is probably the most anticipated game of this round of the playoffs. It's obviously a rematch of the regular season game where Oregon won 32-31, and Will Howard had his Reggie Ball moment. For all you Georgia Tech fans out there, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting game. I am just kind of curious about like which Ohio State team's going to show up, and is Oregon going to continue to be that, Mr. Consistent team in this game? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think on paper this is one of the closest matchups of the year. Ohio State's favored by 2.5, which is interesting. I know they looked great against Tennessee, but once again, that kind of feels like a reactionary thing and not Oregon team that's undefeated. But yeah, I mean, I think this game is going to come down to who can out physical the other one, because these teams both have fantastic rosters filled with both developed players and transfers. There's not one clear advantage. Both of these teams are filled with stars across the field, from the running back position to the quarterback position to the receiver position to the defensive backfield. Oregon, to win this game, as you've said a number of times, Will Howard's liability is when he gets pressured. Oregon is going to have to get a big day from their pass rush. They're going to need big day out of Mateo Uiagalelei. And I hope I said that right. 10.5 sacks on the year. Jordan Burge, 8.5 sacks on the year. They can't let Howard sit back there and get comfortable, which is what Tennessee did, and let his receivers run routes, because eventually they're going to beat people open. They're too good not to. Smith and Ibuka are too good of receivers to sit back there and let your quarterback have time for them to get open, because they will.
Yeah. The other thing is to look out for is how well Dylan Gabriel plays, because in the first game he had a stellar performance, running, throwing, he did it all. So obviously Ohio State's defense is going to try to key on him as much as they can, because he's the offense. So can he have that repeat performance? And like you said, can the Ducks defense affect Will Howard? They don't necessarily have to sack him a whole bunch, but if they can affect him, then the Ducks have a great chance. But Ohio State is absolutely loaded. They got the number one defense in the country, and they've got that awesome three-headed monster on offense with the two running backs and Jeremiah Smith. And it's this is just, it's going to be an awesome game. I can't wait to watch this game.
Yeah. The first game was so close, a 1-point game that came down to clock mismanagement, for lack of a better term. When you got to play somebody twice in the same year, they said this so much leading up to the SEC championship game, that it's hard to beat somebody twice. It's hard to beat somebody twice when you beat the crap out of them the first game, and they're motivated. It's even harder to beat somebody twice when that team really probably should have beat you the first time, or that team had a couple uncharacteristic mistakes that they made in that game that caused them to lose the game. We saw that in 2021. Georgia lost the SEC championship game to Alabama, making mistakes that they had not made all year. The defense made defensive plays that they didn't allow all year. That defense was so good. You get to that national championship game, at the end of the day, the talented, better team wins out in that second matchup. For that reason, I'm picking Ohio State to win this game. I'm picking Ohio State to cover. I think Oregon's awesome. But Ohio State, playing like they did against Tennessee last week, is a better football team than Oregon.
I know by logic, Ohio State, with a 1-point loss on the road and the beatdown of Tennessee, you'd think I'd pick Ohio State. But Oregon is super disciplined under Dan Lanning. They've been super consistent all year long. Oregon has the special teams edge. Ohio State's kicker, he's had some issues, especially during that Michigan game. And Ohio State's coming off the proverbial emotional win. And I'm not convinced that Ryan Day is the type of coach that can have them be consistent in their focus from week to week. Because this past week against Tennessee, everybody was doubting Ohio State and calling for Ryan Day's job, all the stuff with Kirk Herbstreit. I just think all of that stuff, matters and eats away at Ryan Day. So we'll see which team shows up. If if Ohio State shows up ready to play and it's that same team we saw this past week, then yeah, they'd probably steamroll and, it's a decent game, but Ohio State wins. But give me Oregon. Let's go Ducks. Quack, quack.
All right. Next game we've got, it's going to be right here in Atlanta in the Peach Bowl. We've got number 5 Texas taking on number 4 Arizona State. Texas is favored in this game by 14 points, playing their second game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the last 3. Bro, what you got?
Man, Texas just gets the easiest game. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I expect Texas to win this game big. That defense is so good. And as much as I love Cam Scatterbo, I don't think he's enough to put Arizona State over the top of Texas. I don't have much to say about this game. It's just one that I expect Texas to run away with.
So let me ask you a question. Texas and Arizona State. Which team do you think has better wins this season?
Arizona State.
Arizona State has won 6 straight games. 3 of those games were against ranked opponents. So they won their conference championship game, and they beat BYU, and they beat somebody else. I can't think of who it is right now. Arizona State is an improving football team. They've gotten better as the year has gone on. They've got a good young quarterback, and they have a fantastic running back. They have a ton of momentum in this game. Texas had to play a very tough game in the SEC championship game that they lost. And then they had to turn around and play in the first round of the playoffs. Texas coming in off a big 300-yard, rushing performance against Clemson. Are they going to be able to repeat that? Or are they going to struggle again? Is Ewers going to turn the ball over and things like that? Arizona State has the 22nd ranked rushing attack in the country, led by Cam Scatterbo, who is hot. I don't know. There's a lot to think about with Arizona State here. There's a lot of momentum in that way. That being said, give me Texas to cover 14 and probably beat them by way worse.
Yeah. This is just one of those Texas is going to out-roster Arizona State. Cam Scatterbo is amazing. He's great. But Texas from top to bottom, just with Texas' defense, I think it's going to be tough for Cam Scatterbo because he's the focal point of that offense, and Texas is probably going to focus on just taking him away. And they do that, they'll probably be fine.
Right. The one thing Arizona State doesn't have is blow you away receivers. The Texas secondary is playing so well right now. Yes, Cade Klubnik had a decent game, but Cade Klubnik is a senior starting quarterback who was a 5-star and one of the best, prospects in the country and played a really good game. But you tell me that a young Sam Levitt's going to come out there against the strong Texas pass run, it find holes in the secondary where you've got guys like Michael Taffy and Andrew Makuba back there. I just don't see it. I think Texas will win this game, and I think it'll be relatively easy. I think this is also the game that they experiment with the Arch Manning package even more than they did in the Texas A&M game. I think it's a chance to show it, that it's there. If Sarkisian breaks it out in a big game, I don't know. He hasn't yet. But I think it's another game to show it. I think they will take advantage of that. And like I said, I think they win this game.
Yeah, great story for Arizona State, being picked dead last to finish their conference dead last. But Texas is just too much for Arizona State.
All right. So our last quarterfinal game will be the Fiesta Bowl out in Arizona. We got number 6 Penn State coming off their victory over SMU, taking on number 3 Boise State. Penn State goes into this game favored by 10.5. Obviously coming off a very, very strong defensive performance against SMU that included 3 picks, 2 pick sixes, and just an absolute beatdown of Kevin Jennings of SMU. Boise State obviously coming in with Ashton Jeanty. This podcast obviously loves Ashton Jeanty. He was robbed of the Heisman. So we'll see what happens when a great rushing attack meets a rushing defense that is coming off a very, very good performance. What are your thoughts on the game, bro?
Yeah, this is one of the games that I'm actually really looking forward to watch. That Penn State defense versus Boise State and Ashton Jeanty. I expect Penn State's offense to score. I don't think Boise State's defense is anything to write home about. But the big thing is, can Boise bring the same type of game that they played against Oregon week 2? That's the big question for me, because if they do, they're going to win this game.
Yeah,
they are.
So I think obviously you're going to see a lot of loaded boxes against Ashton Jeanty. Penn State is going to want to slow him down because he is the cog that makes this team go. That being said, Boise State quarterback Maddox Madsen has actually had a really, really good year of taking care of the football. He's got 22 touchdown passes on the year, only 3 interceptions. So he's done a really good job of leading them. Boise State, behind the strength of Ashton Jeanty, is the number 6 overall total offense in the country, number 5 rushing offense. So yeah, they're definitely wanting to run the ball because that's what they are. They have this superstar running back who is having a historic year where he is 132 yards shy of breaking the NCAA record for single season rushing. But Boise State's defense is 110th in the country against the pass. They're a little bit better on the rush side. They're 23rd in the country. So Drew Aller is going to have a good game. He's going to have to throw the ball more than 22 times, and he's going to have to push it down the field if Penn State's going to muscle up and beat Boise, because I think Boise's going to be able to run the ball. I don't care if Penn State stacks the box and they're awesome against the run. Ashton Jeanty is the real deal.
Yeah, he's going to get his yards.
So
if he doesn't, I will be shocked.
Yeah, I think this game really is going to come down to the play of Drew Aller.
Yeah, I think so too. So yeah, so who you got?
So in this game, I'm going to take Penn State to win, but I'm going to take Boise State to cover. I think it's close. I think this is a true punch out of a game. And I know a lot of people aren't going to think that they see Boise State with this weak schedule and bad passing defense and whatever, but I'm telling you, I believe in Ashton Jeanty.
I believe in Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that Ashton Jeanty is that good of a player that he can lead his team, because he dang near almost did it when they played Oregon earlier in the year. So I think Penn State has enough to win the game in the end. I think Drew Aller, this could really be his true moment to shine. He's already announced he's coming back next year. I think this really could be his national spotlight game. So give me Penn State to win, Boise State to cover. What you got?
All right, that's a very sensible pick. I applaud you on that. However, I'm going to go with Boise. I thought about this one. I went back and forth. But at the end of the day, I look at the Boise State-Oregon game. It was really, really close game. It was at Oregon. So with Boise going on the road, almost defeating the currently number one ranked team in the country. And the fact that Penn State has a history of losing the big ones. They got a gimme last week. You know, everybody's trying to say, oh, they finally got over it. No. SMU didn't deserve to be on the field with them. I mean, they just don't. But with Boise, people can talk about their weak schedule. But the thing about Boise is they have a history of winning games that they're not supposed to win. That's just built into their culture. They've proved it time and time again. You know, going back to the old Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma, they beat Georgia in one of the Chick-fil-A kickoff games that I was at, and that sucked, but still had a good time. Yeah. So Boise, it doesn't matter with them. Like they're going to come to play, and they've got the best running back in the nation, one of the best running backs that we've seen in a very, very long time. So if, like I said, Boise can bring that same level of game that they did against Oregon, then I think Jeanty powers Boise to the win.
Very interesting. So you're taking Boise, I'm taking Penn State, but I'm taking Boise to cover. So both of us think either way, we're thinking Boise's going to hang in this game, and it's not going to be a repeat of what we saw with Penn State and SMU.
Exactly. Go Broncos.
All right. Yep. So outside of the college football playoff, we do have bowl games going on. Remember those things, bowl games that used to mean something to somebody?
What are those?
Yeah. In bowl matchups and making picks is totally a crapshoot, because so many players are transferring and so many players are opting out that it's just not like it used to be. Bowl games really have become exhibitions and previews for the next season. But this bowl season has given us a few fun matchups, I think. So when you're sitting around after Christmas and you're waiting for these championship games to happen, these are some games that you may want to check out. And we're going to give you our picks and a couple of thoughts on each one. The first game is the Birmingham Bowl. We've got Georgia Tech taking on Vanderbilt, making a return to the postseason for the first time in a few years. Obviously, this was, Vanderbilt finished 6-6, but it was a highlight year for them, upsetting Alabama, almost beating Texas. Their coach, Clark Lee, wins SEC Coach of the Year. And then obviously Georgia Tech, who in my opinion is one of the better, if not the best 7-5 teams in the country, took Georgia to 8 overtimes, played well throughout the year. Technically had two top 10 wins this year, because they knocked off Florida State at the beginning of the year, even though they ended up being horrible, and also knocked Miami off. Should be a fun game. You've got two fun quarterbacks out there who are going to, put on a show. I'm going to take Georgia Tech to win this game, because I just think Georgia Tech is really a pretty good football team, and I think they're going to get better next year. They dang near beat Georgia this year, and they're going to scare me again next year. Who you got in this one, bro?
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech wins this game, but I'm going to be pulling for Vandy so hard in this game.
Like to see our boy Pavia do well.
Yeah, I want to see the forever quarterback Pavia to
Getting
get
ready
his
for
win.
his 7th year in college next year.
Exactly. But yeah, I just think Georgia Tech has too much going for them. Brent Key's a hell of a coach. I mean, he's the right guy for that team, and he's going to have them prepared. Even though they're not going to have Singleton, but as long as they have Haynes King and Philo, they're going to have a chance.
Right. Next game, we want to talk about the Holiday Bowl, which has traditionally always been a pretty good bowl game. We've got Syracuse coming off their upset at the end of the year over Miami, taking on Washington State out of the Pac-2, the second place team in the Pac-2. They had an 8-4 season, so pretty good year. Main thing I want to talk about this game is Syracuse. I think Syracuse is a team on the rise under Fran Brown. They obviously closed the year pretty strong. They finished 9-3. This is Kyle McCord's last game. I think he goes out with a bang. Give me Syracuse to win this game.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree with you again. I mean, Washington State, their quarterback's in the portal. He's the number one portal guy right now. And, they finished last in the Pac-2. The other way of looking at it. So, yeah, Syracuse, Fran Brown, he's our boy. Yeah, it's Syracuse all the way.
All right. Next up, we've got the Las Vegas Bowl, the SEC Las Vegas Bowl, which you got to be pretty low on the SEC totem pole to get in this game. But can you imagine Georgia fans a few days in Las Vegas? We've got Texas A&M taking on USC. USC is in total shambles. They've got so many players in the portal. It's insane. I don't know how much longer Lincoln Riley's going to be there, to be honest with you. Texas A&M on the other side, they've got some guys in the portal too. They've also picked up a ton of guys in the portal, which is not surprising. But I think, under a first-year coach, I think for Elko, this game will be big. And I think for Texas A&M coming off that loss to Texas, they're going to look to get back right. They've got some really good, positive things going on in the transfer portal. So for them, I think they'll take this very seriously. Give me Texas A&M to win again.
Yeah, USC just has too much stuff going on right now. The Branch brothers are probably going to end up at Georgia pretty soon, so they're not going to be in this game. And Texas A&M is really a team on the rise. They finally got the right coach for them. They are able to put some good wins together. They just still need to find their eventual identity with the quarterback now. And but yeah, I think they're just a more put together team, not necessarily a better team. So yeah. Texas A&M all day.
All right. Next up, we've got the game with the best trophy in all of bowl season, the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Yeah.
The new trophy that's actually a toaster this year, the crazy mascot, but also a really intriguing matchup actually in this game. We've got Miami taking on Iowa State. We've got two teams that both just missed out on making the college football playoff. Miami, they were one of the first teams out. Iowa State lost in its conference championship game, so ended up missing the playoff. But I think you've got two really good teams here. Cam Ward came out and said he is playing in this game. Just for that fact, give me Miami. I think he wants to go out with a bang.
Yeah, it's hard to go against that, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm just pulling for Iowa State. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so let's go Clones.
All right. Up next, we've got the ReliaQuest Bowl. What the hell is the ReliaQuest Bowl? Well, it's the Outback Bowl. We've got Alabama taking on Michigan. Fun fact is that obviously Alabama and Michigan played in the playoff last year. We had Michigan and Texas play earlier this season, and we had Michigan and Washington play this season. So all three of the games from the college football playoff last year had rematches in this season, which I think that's pretty cool. I don't think that's happened before. Alabama, has had some transfers, which is unusual for them, but they also pulled some kids back. Milroe came out and said he's playing. Some of their guys that are outgoing said they're playing in this game. For Michigan, obviously they're coming off the nice win against Ohio State, but they've had some more transfers out. They're starting a walk-on at quarterback. I just think Alabama,
who beat Ohio State.
Right. True. But I think if DeBoer lost this game, like, seriously, they might just string him up somewhere in Alabama. Like, I don't think he can lose this game. I know that some people were saying, oh, Alabama's not going to be motivated. It's going to be, Bama versus Utah, whatever. I think they're going to be very motivated to win this game. I think they do. I think they blow them out because they should. They're a much better team than Michigan.
Yeah, I want to go with Alabama, but for some reason, I feel like Michigan is going to be ultra motivated for this game too, because they had an even worse season. They ended on a really high note, and I think they want to keep that momentum going into next year. So give me Michigan, because I want to see some craziness and some turmoil in Alabama and Tuscaloosa.
All right. Last game we're going to hit on is the Citrus Bowl, which it's the Citrus Bowl, but it's now sponsored by Cheez-It, and they've kind of almost transitioned this into the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. It's kind of funny. It goes with the orange color. But I think this one is a good matchup. I really do think this is a good matchup of two teams that have, over the recent years, had not been great in their conferences, but really had good, solid years. And that's South Carolina taking on Illinois. This one should be a fun one. South Carolina obviously was, down the stretch, one of the best teams in the country. Their defense was playing lights out. Lenora Sellers has turned into a star. They were playing great. They probably should have been in the playoff based on the results that we saw. And then you got Illinois, who had a really solid year in the Big Ten this year. Was able to beat Michigan and just missed out on making the conference championship game, honestly. So this should be a good game. I'm going to go with South Carolina, though my heart for my fellow Georgia fan and national writer Will Leach, his Illinois team, I'd like to pick them, but I think South Carolina is going to win the game. And I think this is another piece of momentum for South Carolina moving into next year. They're going to be pissed, and they're going to be motivated to win the game. So give me South Carolina.
Yeah, I think South Carolina is just too much for Illinois. I don't think this one's going to be close. Go Cox, baby.
All right. So that's all the games that we were going to pick this week, and that'll wrap us up. If you're listening to this, we hope that you're having a good holiday with your family. Merry Christmas. After the quarterfinal games, we'll be back for our semifinal preview. But once again, if you enjoy the show, leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, leave us some comments, and we'll talk to you soon. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.